This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also, for the most part, unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 143rd time ever, we are live from the Reviewing Network Studios. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Reviewing Network Live on this Memorial Day weekend. How's it going for you folks out there? Not that I could hear you, but you can probably tell me in the comments if you really want to tell me how you're doing. But yeah, it is the official. A long time ago, this was officially the start of the summer season, Memorial Day. But then, mostly because of the movies that were coming out. But of course, now that times have changed, in the 20 years since then, pretty much every weekend is basically a summer block, the start of summer movie season. But this weekend in particular did have a couple of noteworthy movies to talk about here. And we do have a couple of news stories worth mentioning this past week in the world of entertainment. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. Let's start off with the Memorial Day weekend box office. And yeah, a lot of people probably are not going to be happy with the results because I know many people wanted the number one movie to fail, but kind of landed right where everyone was expecting it to do, but they're still going to paint it as something that is terrible simply because of the franchise that's associated with. But anyway, let's get to it. Number 5 this week, still hanging in there after 3 weeks, The Sheep Detectives, which brought in $9 million, only dropping 6.2% from last weekend, bringing its 3-week total to $43.5 million. It has just crossed the $76 million threshold worldwide. It cost $75 million to make, so it's going to make its money back in more ways than one. Plus, it's a really good movie. It's a really great film. I've talked about it enough. If you want to include the Memorial Day weekend numbers, because of course tomorrow is Memorial Day, and they have projections for the 4-day weekend as well as the 3-day weekend. That was the 3-day weekend I just talked about. 4-day totals up to $12.4 million, $47 million after 3 weeks. So there you go. Number 4, Devil Wears Prada 2, which brought in $12.6 million over the 3-day weekend, dropping only 30% from last weekend. $196.1 million if you count the numbers on the 3-day weekend, but if you add in the worldwide if you add in the 4-day weekend numbers, it's up to $16.5 million after 4 days, $200 million total after the Memorial Day weekend. It's already crossed the $600 million threshold of the worldwide box office. I've said my piece about that movie, as I've said my piece about the number 3 movie, Michael, which is still hanging in there. 3-day totals, $20 million, $314 million. If you include the 4-day totals, $25.7 million, and after 5 weeks, it's brought in $319.9 million, bringing its worldwide total closing in on $800 million worldwide. So yeah, like I said, I've said my piece about that one. So let's go ahead and get to the 2 most interesting movies in the top 5. Interesting in the sense that I saw both of these movies. One was from last week, and the other was this week's new release. So let's go to number 2. The biggest is the big sleeper of the summer so far, and that is, of course, Obsession. Now, Obsession opened last week to about, 17 million? $17.2 million was the opening for it last weekend. It did something that most people were not expecting this movie to do, and that's the sense that it's gaining attraction and gaining legs over the course of the last couple of days, to the point where it actually improved in both the 3-day and the 4-day window for the holiday weekend. 3-day total, it's up to $22.4 million, $52.7 million, but if you count Monday's totals, $28.2 million, $58.5 million. Keep in mind, this movie cost $1 million to make, so it was already a hit regardless, but man, people are just lining up for this movie, and just, they're talking about it so much that it's building something that we don't usually see in a long time, word of mouth beginning to build on this movie, and yeah, closing in on $80 million worldwide, and I saw it this weekend finally, and I'm glad I did, because, yeah, you can't oversell this movie, man. This film is just pure amazing, is epicness, if you will. It's great. It's pure greatness. Also, let's go with pure greatness, because, yeah, it's a really good movie, man. It is one of the best movies of the year. It's right up there with The Sheep Detectives and Project Hail Mary as the best movie of the year so far. I mean, this movie was amazing to sit through. It is gut-wrenching to sit through. You feel terrible for this woman who's being put through this whole thing. Yeah, the guy is the villain in this movie, but, man, there are scenes in this movie where this woman, Indy Navarrete, I gotta say, man, like, I'm starting to believe why people want her to be nominated for Best Actress at the Oscars this year. I want it to happen. Probably will not happen, because I think people will forget this movie more than Sinners, but I feel like this movie is this year's Sinners. It's that big breakout horror hit nobody really saw coming, and yeah, even more so than Sinners, because at least Sinners had Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld. With this, no notable stars in here. The only big star was Curry Barker, and Jason Blum, too, even though Blum's name's not even remotely on the marketing as much as the director Curry Barker is, but hey, nevertheless, he made a fantastic movie, one of the best films of the year, and I feel like this film is going to continue to find legs over the next couple of weeks. Sorry about that, I had something in my throat, good lord. I'm okay now, but, like I said, I think it's a movie that's definitely going to find some legs over the next couple of weeks. I don't think it's going to be the number one movie next week, because I still think the number one film will still stick around next week, but you never know. We're seeing something that we haven't usually seen done with a movie like this before, so there is a slim possibility that Obsession could maybe sneak in as the number one movie, depending how big the drop-off is for the number one film, but I don't think there's going to be that much big of a drop-off for it. But nevertheless, I mean, this thing is probably going to make a ton of money. It'll probably get to $100 million sooner rather than later, and then after that, all bets are off, man. I'm really curious to see what they'll do going forward with this, but in terms of if this film becomes a franchise, which it more than likely will, but nevertheless, it's still a great movie. If you haven't seen Obsession yet, you gotta see Obsession, man. It is one of the best films of the year. You can't oversell this film at all, So with that said, let's get to the number one movie this week, which, you know, people who were ready to call this the death of Star Wars are going to be severely disappointed, because this film actually did slightly better than people were expecting it to do. The Mandalorian and Grogu, which brought in $82 million over the 3-day weekend, which was about what people expected it to go. Yeah, it is one of the worst openings for a Star Wars movie, but at the same time, it's still not bad at all. Far from it, especially for a film that cost $165 million to produce. I mean, this is one of the lower budget Star Wars films that they've had as of late. But if you count the 4-day weekend, it has crossed over $102 million. So yeah, it is a hit all across the board, and it made back that $165 million budget almost immediately, if you include worldwide numbers. So yeah, it is a big hit. It's a massive hit. It's what Disney was hoping for, and it's a little bit better than they expected it to be. Like, granted, yeah, it's no Lilo and Stitch, but Lilo and Stitch was an unexpected hit the previous year that did a lot better than most people were expecting it to do. But yeah, this thing did slightly better than most people would have expected it to do, and it really is not as bad as people make it out to be. Is it a great movie? I'm not going to go that far. There are definitely a lot of flaws to it, mostly in the sense that this really had two big problems with it. One, it never felt like it deserved to be seen on the biggest screen possible. And two, it had the same problems Moana 2 did a couple years ago, where they basically took a season of a Disney Plus show, cut it down, and just put it into a movie, which, unlike Moana 2, which did it so poorly, this one did it in a way where I can say that it is overall still an entertaining movie. It's a good, fun summer escapism entertainment piece. I mean, it's a movie that you go to the movies during the summertime. It's hot outside. It's raining like crazy. In fact, around here in western Pennsylvania, it's been raining all weekend long, and it's probably going to rain tomorrow for Memorial Day, but yeah, you go to the movies, you go see this, and you have a good time with it. And I had a good time with it. A lot of people had a good time with it from the theater screening that I saw it with. So yeah, once again, the internet trolls who wanted Star Wars to crash over and die, yeah, sorry to disappoint you, but that's not happening with this movie. I don't think that this movie is going to affect the overall future of Star Wars in general. I think the next year's Star Wars movie, which is a Star Wars Starfighter, which is the one with Sean Levy directing and also featuring Ryan Gosling, just coming off of Project Hail Mary. I think that's the one that a lot of people are really going to be looking at and looking to see if that movie is going to really give us a depiction of what the future of Star Wars holds there in general. But I mean, it's got good people on board. It's got a good director on board. It's got good casting overall with Ryan Gosling, Matt Smith, Mia Goth, Amy Adams is in here too. So yeah, I think it's going to do I think it should do very well. I think it should have enough there to get people involved in it. I mean, I'm reading right here that Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise actually were on the set of this movie, and Cruise actually served as a camera operator for the lightsaber duel in this movie. So I think that's pretty interesting, and I think it's going to be pretty cool to see in this particular movie. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this movie when it comes out next year. So as far as The Mandalorian and Grogu goes, I think it did well enough to say that Star Wars is still stable under Disney. And it's going to be a very good year for them overall. We have Toy Story 5 coming up next month, which will probably get the same kind of critical reception that Star Wars did. Hopefully it turns out to be good, which will probably be but, you know, the people who want Disney to crash and burn are going to come out in the floodgates and say that Toy Story 5 is the worst Toy Story movie ever. Like, yeah. So, there you go. Let's take a look at some other movies that open up this weekend, because there was 2 notable movies opening up this weekend. One of which was the latest film from Boots Riley. I believe this is his first film since Sorry to Bother You, I Love Boosters, which I had heard about a long time ago, and I honestly forgot was getting a release this weekend in general. In fact, I thought it was getting a limited release this weekend, but I guess it's getting because I thought the wide release was going to be next weekend. But if you don't know what this movie is about, it's about a group of shoplifters taking aim at a cutthroat fashion maven by stealing her clothes and reselling them at a lower price. What they call fashion-forward philanthropy. And the word of mouth on this movie has been pretty solid. I've heard nothing but good things from the people that I can trust when it comes to movies like this. Did very well with the critical reception overall. Metacritic, it's a 70 out of 100. It's got a B on CinemaScore, a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. And like I said, it's the first movie that this guy has directed since Sorry to Bother You, which I really love that movie. It's one of my favorite films of that year. You got a cast that includes a lot of good talent: Keke Palmer, Naomi Ackie, Taylor Page, Isa Gonzalez, Lakeith Stanfield, Will Poulter, Don Cheadle, Demi Moore. Budget on this was $20 million. If you count the 3-day weekend, it brought in $3.7 million in 1,700 theaters. And if you count the Memorial Day numbers, $4.6 million. Altogether, you've got, well, that's it, because there's no international release just yet for this. But, I mean, it cost $20 million to make, and I thought this movie was going to have, like, a limited release at first and then a wide release next week, but it already opened up in 1,700 theaters, so I don't know if that's good for this movie in particular, but it'll probably find its audience through streaming and physical media and Blu-ray and all that type of stuff. But let's move on to the other big new release this weekend, which was Passenger, which had a big trailer premiere during Scream that got a lot of people excited, myself included. It was actually one of the few things that made that screening worth watching. After a young couple witnessed a gruesome highway accident, they soon realized they did not leave the crash scene alone, as a demonic presence called the Passenger won't stop until it claims them both. So the things I've been hearing about this movie is that it's kind of like a mix between Smile and It Follows, which sounds pretty awesome, and has a good director on board to direct it. I mean, this is the guy that directed some of my favorite horror films of the last couple of years: Overlord, Last Voyage of the Demeter. So I was excited to see this. Andre Overdahl was the guy's name. Brought in $8.7 million for the 3-day total, $10.5 million after the 4-day totals. If you include worldwide numbers, it's up to $15.3 million, which $15 million is the budget for this film. However, the reviews for this are not as strong as I was hoping for. 44% on Rotten Tomatoes, 52 out of 100 on Metacritic, a B- on CinemaScore. Yeah, not a good sign for this movie going forward. And from what I heard, the reception for the film actually uses stuff that's not in the actual trailers. Like they put Steve, I said that wrong. There's stuff in this movie that the trailer promised was in there, but is not. I mean, the opening scene is in there from what I heard, but other than that, everything else they were promising, yeah, that's not in this movie, which is usually not a good sign for this film. But hey, it's a small budgeted film. It's made its money back, so Paramount's not really complaining about this one too much. But at least they won't be able to make a franchise out of this. But then again, they probably will. I'm sure Paramount Plus is already looking to see what they could do with what they could do with this down the road for potential future films in the series. But How many times can I say during this video? Take a drink, because you'll be drunk by the time you'll be plastered by the end of this. But anyway, the end of the month is coming next week. We have a couple of movies coming out that I really don't know how they're going to do. I think Backrooms is going to be the biggest one of the two because it is based off the video game. Features the creator of the video game, Kane Parsons, directing it, and features a cast that includes Chiwetel Ejiofor, Renata Rainsby, who just was nominated for Unsentimental Value at the Oscars this past year, Mark Duplass. It has notable names involved in it. It's a lower budget $10 million movie, and I think there is at least enough of a fan base for this that the film cost over $10 million to make, so if it can make at least that budget back, it'll do very well overall. I think it'll do very good business at the box office, and I'm seeing there's a lot of notable names behind the production team behind this. James Wan and his Atomic Monster Company, Sean Levy, 21 Laps, Osgood Perkins, who is a big draw in the last couple of years with Longlegs and the Monkey, Peter Chernin, who's a big-time producer. So there is a lot of names involved in this that I think will carry the film overall in the overall box office. But I think it's really going to depend on how the film does with the critical reception overall. But then again, maybe not. Horror films usually, most horror films for the most part, do pretty good business without the praise by critics. I mean, Passenger did very well. This did okay for its weekend, but I digress. And then the other one I'm kind of curious about is The Breadwinner, which is basically Mr. Mom for a new generation, except replace Michael Keaton with Nate Bargatze. It's a movie where you have his wife Mandy Moore. She ends up getting a deal on Shark Tank, and so Nate Bargatze becomes a stay-at-home dad. So yeah, it's literally the same plot as Mr. Mom. I mean, it literally could be a remake of this, but I don't know. My interest is kind of piqued on this because, one, it's directed by Eric Apple. He's the guy that made a really good parody movie a couple years ago based off of Weird Al Yankovic, Weird the Al Yankovic story with Daniel Radcliffe in it, which was basically one of the funnier satires of these musical biopics we've ever had. But this is looking like it's going to be a true test of Nate Bargatze's box office status in general. He's got a lot of ambition, too, because not only does he have this, but remember, he's also the guy that's trying to build his own theme park in, where are they building this at? I think in Tennessee, I think it is. I just saw the pictures of it earlier this week. Let me see if I can find it. It's a place called Nateland. Yeah, Nateland Entertainment, Nateland Productions, Nashville, Tennessee. And I think there was some stuff that came out this week about like the designs and all that of what he had in mind. Yeah, right here. So yeah, I'm looking at it right now. This is from Orange County Register, and it looks like he has it's a big theme park in general here. Did they get the money to do this, or is this still just like an idea in the head of Bargatze here? Let me see. Taking a look at the article now. He and Nate Bargatze unveiled the first look at his theme park plan for his hometown Nashville. So it's going to be in Nashville. A $350 million price tag on the 100-acre theme park resort with retail, dining, and a hotel during an... Sorry, another pop-up came up here, but... Did this go through, or is this still something in the making here? I'm trying to see if I can look through this article here. I don't know, it doesn't say anything in this article, but it looks promising overall. It does look like something you would expect to see outside of a theme park like this. I mean, it looks kind of like Epic Universe in a way when I really look at it, but yeah, it's a very interesting ambitions for this guy overall. So, I hope for the best for him. I mean, he is a funny comedian. This movie, yeah, it looks very similar to Mr. Mom, but at the same time, I mean, it could be good. I mean, it could be fun overall. It could be a fun movie. There's nothing wrong with a film being just simple fun all across the board. I mean, we just had one this weekend with The Mandalorian and Grogu, so there you go. So, anyway, I don't know how good it's going to do at the box office, though. I'm going to be very curious to see how well it's going to do financially, so... Alright, so that's it for the weekend box office here. So let's go ahead and get to some news stories this week, because there were some notable ones we're talking about. So yeah, we're still waiting for Community to finish its inevitable dream of 6 seasons of a movie, but apparently the Rick and Morty movie is getting closer and closer to becoming a reality, as we got news of a director that is in talks to direct this week. This is a story from Deadline Hollywood that says that Warner Brothers is in early development on a Rick and Morty movie with franchise veteran Jacob Hare in talks to direct, Deadline can confirm. Plot details are under wraps. Dan Harmon, who co-created the show with Justin Roiland, has alluded to a plan for a super badass feature-length film for a number of years. Set to launch its ninth season this coming Sunday, which is tonight, by the way, Rick and Morty is an Emmy-winning award adult animated series following genius alcoholic math scientist Rick Sanchez and his anxious grandson Morty Smith as they split time between suburban family life and dimension-hopping adventures across an infinite multiverse. Roiland voiced both roles before exiting the series in 2023 after felony domestic abuse charges that were ultimately dismissed. Ian Cardoni and Harry Belden now voice Rick and Morty, respectively. The show has been on the air since 2013, with Harry joining in 2019, directing numerous episodes and serving as a supervisor director. So, yeah, Rick and Morty, of course, everyone knows what Rick and Morty is. I watch Rick and Morty every once in a while. I did watch the show from the beginning. I will say that the show has a little bit overstayed its welcome, but every time I watch it every once in a while, it's still fine. And, you know, it's amazing how Rick and Morty is so close to getting a feature film, but like I said, Community isn't getting one yet anytime soon until they get everybody in the cast involved to do it. Not only that, but also they've been talking about doing a Family Guy movie for a long period of time. I think they've been talking about doing a Futurama movie for the big screen for a number of years. And, of course, you got the Simpsons movie sequel coming out next summer, so maybe the Simpsons movie 2 is probably the reason why Warner Brothers is so keen on getting a Rick and Morty film off the ground here. But, of course, you got to play the question of, if this Paramount-Warner Brothers merger goes through, will this survive the merger? And I do think it probably will, because Rick and Morty is still a profitable franchise for Warner Brothers. I think Paramount will look at that look at that overall and go along for the ride with this one here. I would like to think they would, but you never know. You never know with Warner Brothers and Paramount at this point, especially considering what they just did to Stephen Colbert. More on that a little bit later, but anyway, that's all I got to say about the Rick and Morty movie, so let's move on to our next story. So we seem to be on this musical biopic hot streak right now, with Michael becoming the highest-grossing biopic of all time. So yeah, unfortunately, that means we're probably going to see more of these safe and sanitized biopics in the not-too-distant future. But at least one person is looking at what's one that's being developed right now and saying, "Hold on a minute, motherfucker. You got to let me say my piece on this." So this is from The Hollywood Reporter, and it's about Billy Joel, who blasts an unauthorized biopic that is in the works right now, which is being directed by the editor of both Michael and Bohemian Rhapsody, John Ottman, who of course worked with Bryan Singer a lot in the last couple decades. But the story goes like this: a biopic chronicling the early life of legendary rock star Billy Joel is in the works, though the piano man himself isn't affiliated with the project, and he's calling out the film as both legally and professionally misguided. John Ottman, who edited the recently released Michael, is directing Billy and Me, with Adam Ripp writing the screenplay. For the project, Ottman and Ripp have secured the life rights of Billy Joel's former manager, Erwin Mazur, as well as John Small, a longtime friend of Joel's. But as a rep for Joel said, the singer has been in touch with filmmakers for several years to confirm that they do not have his own rights for the picture. And this is a quote from him: "Since 2021, the parties involved have been officially notified that they do not possess Billy Joel's life rights and will not be able to secure the music rights required for the project," Joel's rep said in a statement. So this is his representative saying it, not Joel himself. But Billy Joel has not authorized or supported this project in any capacity, and any attempt to move forward with it without it will be both legally and professionally misguided. Given the years-long development timeline, it's unclear if Ottman's plan for the film was always an unauthorized biopic, or if he had the hope that initially been that Joel would give this blessing. Ottman has been affiliated with some of the biggest biopics of the past decade. Aside from Michael, he served as an editor for Bohemian Rhapsody, which he won an Oscar for Best Film Editing. He won an Oscar for that movie? Good Lord. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody is a movie where... Bohemian Rhapsody is the greatest song of all time. Sue me. But the movie... piece of shit. That movie... Okay, maybe I'm overselling it too much, but no, it's just not a good movie, man. I think that movie got overhyped too much, and, Rami Malek winning the Oscar for Best Actor I always remember Oscar night when they showed the clip from him, Rami Malek from Bohemian Rhapsody, and it's a scene where he's not acting, he's lip-syncing to Freddie Mercury singing Bohemian Rhapsody. It literally shows a clip of him lip-syncing. They don't even show him acting in the movie. That movie. Well, I'll save that for time about the movies when we get there, because we're almost there. We're about 2 years away from the time of recording this, from getting there. 2 years from the time period I'm out of the show. More than likely a couple months from now, from the time you'll see it on the channel, so on the main channel. But anyway, back to the story here. When contacted by the Hollywood Reporter, Ottman said in an email that "we have always been very upfront about the project. The film is told from the perspective of Erwin Mazur, and we hold the exclusive life rights to Erwin Mazur. And the film neither depicts nor seeks to use any of Billy Joel's original music because it takes place during his formative years performing cover songs with the hassles and struggles to find his artistic identity, Ottman said. We don't know who this rep is, but to characterize the project as legally and professionally misguided does not accurately reflect the actual nature of the film or the rights underlying the production. The project is based off of Erwin Mazur's first-hand experiences and his legitimate right to tell his own life story and perspective surrounding the events depicted in the film. So, okay, so it's kind of a little bit of a complicated situation here because they want to do this movie like during the. They want to do this movie, but they want to put... Actually, before I even talk about it, there's more to the story here. So why don't I do this before I jump into the conversation I have here. Ottman further said that I have tremendous respect for Billy Joel and his legacy. Our intention has always been to tell an honest, heartfelt story surrounding the young artist before the world knew his name. Yeah, because you did such a good job with it with Michael and Bohemian Rhapsody. Just... Okay, no. Okay, I'm done with that. So, in a statement, Rip offered a similar perspective. The film takes place during Billy's formative years, before the fame, before the fortune, and before the iconic songs that made him the piano man, he said. Much of the period depicts centers around Billy's early years, performing cover songs with the hassles, and struggling to find his artistic identity as a young musician. At no point we have ever claimed to control or possess rights to Billy Joel's original songs, nor has the film ever been conceived around the use of his hit catalog. The project was always designed as an intimate origin story focusing on the people and the relationships surrounding Billy during a specific period of his life. The film is told primarily through the point of view of Erwin Mazur, who discovered Billy as a teenager and managed him for approximately 7 years. We hold the exclusive life rights to Erwin Mazur. Additionally, we also hold the life rights to Billy's lifelong best friend and original drummer, John Small, who is actively involved in the production as a consultant, co-executive producer and second-unit director. John personally consulted on the screenplay and fully endorses the film as someone who lived through and experienced the events portrayed firsthand. Well, of course he's going to say that. I mean, that's the same thing that the guys from Queen said about Bohemian Rhapsody, and look at how well that turned out. I'm sorry, I'm bad-mouthing Bohemian Rhapsody, but I'm sorry, I can't help it, man. That movie is the prime example of everything that is wrong with biopics nowadays. They're too safe, they're too marketable, and they just do stuff like that what they're sounding like here. Now, in a way, I could see where they're coming from, with Billy Joel coming out and saying that, you know, they don't want him to use his songs for this movie. I can get behind that idea, but at the same time, I mean, the producers really aren't making themselves look better by saying some of this stuff in general. It's like they want to do a movie about this guy, and so they bring in somebody who knew Billy Joel very well and was involved in the scriptwriting process here. And again, it's just giving me bad flashbacks of what happened with Bohemian Rhapsody and the whole idea of, you know, trying to make a story about Freddie Mercury, but making it the most safe and blandest marketable way to sell a film. And yeah, that movie didn't work out so well. And I feel like the worst that's going to happen with this movie in general here. I really don't think this is a good idea overall, and I hope that Billy Joel wins this argument, because right now I think he has legitimate reasoning for why we shouldn't be doing this, but then again, we'll see what happens as we go down the road here. But, I mean, right now, I kind of agree with Billy Joel. I think it's something where it's just kind of like, yeah, I think Billy Joel's more right than the people involved in this movie. Usually the entertainer is right about 9 times out of 10, so we'll see if this transpires, we'll see if this gets anywhere. Judging by the battle at hand here, probably not, but we will see. So, moving on to our next story, the latest on the Daniels' latest new movie. So, a couple of weeks ago, Ryan Gosling was attached to star in the latest film from the Daniels, their first film since Everything Everywhere All at Once. Well, now, of course, that didn't happen, so now they are trusting it to Matt Damon. Daniels have finally found their man. Matt Damon is in talks to become the big-name star in the newest feature from Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Universal is backing the project. Daniels is first since their sensation Everything Everywhere All at Once won 7 Oscars in 2023. The project is operating under a cloak of secrecy. Well, Make That has been operating under such a cloak, as the Hollywood Reporter can exclusively reveal previously unknown details about the casting and the story. It says here that Daniels has been working on the project for the past 3 years, powering through the challenges of budget, script, and casting. The latest issues involve the latter two. The story for the feature is described as involving global warming, time travel, as well as a possible superhero angle, and there are 2 timelines, one set in the 1980s and one set in the present day. The protagonists in the story are teens, at least in the 1980s set timeline. Daniels are said to have been casting the teen role since 2024 before postponing the production one or more times, streamlining the story from an initial 3 time periods to 2, impacting the script writing, and was one of several factors behind the delay. In fact, there may have already been choices to play the teens, but have been waiting to cast some of the bigger names first. Initially, Daniels had their sights on Ryan Gosling as the big name for their feature, the role of that of a father of one of the teens, and was as substantial as it was supporting in nature. Gosling, after initially agreeing, thought it should be larger and asked for script changes, according to sources. Daniels did not necessarily disagree, but there was a larger issue. The project, which had already been pushed, had to start production by the end of the summer or early fall because it had received a California tax credit. Accommodating Gosling would require more script revisions, and time was simply running out. So in a whirlwind week or two, Gosling was in, then out. Daniels scrambled, and sources say there's even a time when Jack Black was considered. The duo quickly pivoted to Damon, who is already well-liked at Universal, not only for starring in the Bourne action movies, but as the lead of Christopher Nolan's epic The Odyssey, opening this July. With Damon now on the path, Daniels can turn their attention on finding the right actor to play his son. So yeah, this is one of those movies where we've been looking forward to it for a long time, to the point where, it seems like we're getting close to development hell territory, which is usually not a very good sign for movies like this. But right now we can trust the Daniels because they made one of the best picture winners of the last decade, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this project finally goes forward. Hopefully it does get going this sooner rather than later, because, yeah, we've all been waiting to see what they're going to do next after what they did with Everything Everywhere All at Once. So, not much more to say about that one, except that it looks like we're getting that movie closer than we can possibly imagine. So let's go ahead and move on to our next story. And that is that the Betty Boop movie is finally getting back on track again after, God, how many years since we last heard about Simon Cowell being involved in it. It was probably about almost 5-10 years ago, I think. Probably around that time. But there was some big news about the film and who will be starring in it, which I think is very interesting because it's a name that you probably would not expect. So this comes from Variety, and it says that Quanita Brunson is stepping into the world's most famous flapper. Which sounds sexual, but that's how Variety put it out there. The Abbott Elementary creator and Emmy winner will develop and star as Betty Boop in a feature film adaptation of the nearly century-old animated icon, Variety has learned exclusively. Brunson's company, Fifth Chance Productions, has partnered with Mark Fleischer, grandson of Betty Boop creator Max Fleischer, and Fleischer Studios on the project, which is currently in development and overseen by Fifth Chance's head of creative affairs, Aaron Rodgers. I think I pronounced that incorrectly. The film will trace the origins and evolution of Betty Boop through the perspective of her creator Max Fleischer, examining the relationship between the artist and his creation as he navigates the creative and commercial pressures of building one of the world's first animated icons, particularly as that icon begins to take on a life of its own. It'll mark Betty Boop's first theatrical motion picture appearance in a starring role since the 1930s, when she emerged from Fleischer Studios' groundbreaking Talk Cartoons, I can see why that name didn't stick, series to become the first and only animated independent female movie superstar of her era. Betty Boop is one of our nation's most beloved cartoon characters, yet somehow still remains pleasantly niche, Brunson wrote in a statement. She has had a quiet but undeniable impact on culture for nearly a century. After Aaron and I met with Mark and learned more about his grandfather's creation of Betty, I realized there was a much deeper story to tell, one that could be explored in ways that feel refreshing, subversive, and timeless, much like Betty herself. Added Mark Fleischer, when Quanita first approached me with the unique concept of a movie about the relationship of my grandfather, Max Fleischer, and his creation, Betty Boop, I was breathtaken. Quanita so embodies Betty's love of life, intelligence, humor, sassiness, and compassion that the relationship between her and Betty and Max burst into life at its mere mention. Like Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie did with the blockbuster Barbie, Brunson, who built her Abbott Elementary into network television's defining comedy of the decade, could follow a simple template. A formidable female creator star reimagining a nearly century-old female character through a contemporary lens. Created by Max Fleischer in 1930, Betty Boop appeared in more than 100 cartoons during her original run, evolving from a poodle-like nightclub singer into the fully human jazz age icon recognized around the world today. She was the first cartoon character profiled by A&E's biography and most recently anchored the Broadway media Boop. Her global licensing footprint spans fashion, beauty, collectibles, and contemporary brand collaborations, positioning her among the most successful licensed classic characters in entertainment history. So, Yeah, this is a very interesting project for a number of different reasons. One, simply the fact that you have a black person taking on the role of Betty Boop, which I have no problems with that whatsoever. I mean, Quanita Brunson really looks like somebody who could possibly fill that role and do it very well. And there's even debates about whether or not Betty Boop's intentions were that she was supposed to be kind of black, but they kind of made her into a white person later on down the road. But I mean, I always thought that Betty Boop, if you were going to do it nowadays, I mean, there's a couple people I probably would have done it with first. Like the two names for me that I always thought of when doing a Betty Boop movie, kind of similar to essentially what happened with this movie. For some reason, I think Mindy Kaling probably would have made a good Betty Boop if they decided to take it in that direction overall. But if you were gonna go for the classic, iconic Betty Boop look, I would probably say Sabrina Carpenter. Like if you were gonna do it nowadays, I would have probably said Sabrina Carpenter first before I would think of Quanita Brunson. But anyway, yeah, that's just my personal thinking behind it overall. But nevertheless, it's still really interesting casting overall, and I think now's the time to do a Betty Boop movie for a new generation. It's been 40 years since the last time she was in a big project, a big film project, because she had a cameo, of course, in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that is coming up on 40 years now in about 2 years' time. But 1988. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept overall, and I am all for it. I love Quanita Brunson. I love what she does on Abbott Elementary. Been waiting for her to branch out to become kind of that next big movie star. So here's hoping this project gets off the ground finally. It's something that they've been trying to do for a long period of time, and yet, just things have caused it to not move forward as quickly as they were hoping to do so. But yeah, here's hoping that gets done. So not much more to say about that one. So let's go ahead and move on to our next story here, which has a lot of conflicting reports about whether or not we're actually getting a movie based off of this, because this is based off of one of the most beloved franchises of all time. So yeah, this is very interesting because the week started off with them announcing this new book from the Godfather saga, but then there was these conflicting reports about them doing a new Godfather movie, which I have yet to hear anything about that, but I do have the story about the new Godfather book right here. This again from the Hollywood Reporter. Can Francis Ford Coppola be pulled back in for another Godfather? Just when he thought he was out, a new Corleone family saga is arriving on bookshelves that could prove to be as tempting as a cannoli at Louis'. Random House just won an 8-way auction for Connie, a new novel authorized by the Mario Puzo estate, written by best-selling Italian-American author Adriana Trigiani, due out fall 2027. The book will tell the story from the perspective of Don Vito's only daughter. Film rights go to Paramount. And I think that's what people are looking at here when it comes to this, because they see film rights go to Paramount, and their first thought is, from the stuff I saw as soon as the story came out, oh, Paramount's going to reboot The Godfather, Paramount's going to revive The Godfather. No, they're not just yet, because they didn't say in this article that they're going to do it right away. But in fact, in this next paragraph I'm looking at right here, as soon as this pop-up gets out of the way, there we go. These stupid pop-ups on the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, man. Variety does it too, but yeah. So anyway, back to the article. That last part is no accident. When Paramount bought the rights to Puzo's original novel in 1969, it claimed ownership of the entire franchise, future books included. Puzo died in 1999 after his heirs... Again, another one of these pop-ups. It's not the one where the screen goes black and all that. It's like a lenticular ad that just randomly pops up in the middle of this. Like, it's annoying. It's annoying. Anyway, Puzo died in 1999, and after his heirs published 2 more Godfather novels over the studio's objections, they ended up in court. The eventual settlement gave the family the freedom to publish new books as long as Paramount gets first crack at the film rights. It wasn't personal, it was strictly business. So there you go. It's not an official confirmation that they're going to do a movie off of this, because if they were going to do a movie off of the new Godfather books, I would think they were going to do it first on the ones that are already out, like The Godfather Returns or The Godfather's Revenge. Do something like that in general first before you do something that hasn't even been released yet. The female POV may be the book's biggest commercial asset. Hollywood is still processing the lessons of The Devil Wears Prada 2, that women, long undeserved as an audience, will show up in enormous numbers of stories built around them. or will appear for sequels that are completely unnecessary and talk more about what kind of shoes they're wearing and drink as many cocktails as they will. Because that's what The Devil Wears Prada 2 was. It was another Mamma Mia Sex and the City type of element to it, where they all probably gabbed at each other during the film instead of actually looking at the film, and probably completely forgot about it as soon as they got home. That's my thinking still behind it, but... Alas, a rep for Coppola tells Rambling it's unlikely the 87-year-old director will be making a female-focused Godfather 4 anytime soon. Why would he? I mean, why would he at this point? I mean, Francis Ford Coppola can't be trusted to begin with. Did you see Megalopolis? Yeah. Bad movie. It's a shame since it turns out the original inspiration for Don Corleone, at least according to Puzo's son Anthony, was Puzo's mother. Go figure, the whole thing was a matriarchy for the start. But, no, I wouldn't expect Francis Ford Coppola to come back and do a new Godfather movie. If you're gonna do a new series of Godfather films, there's only one director I think you need to get for a film like this. Denis Villeneuve, I think, is the guy that you get for a film like this. I think after what he did with Dune, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, I'd be very curious to see what a trilogy of Godfather films would be like under the direction of Denis Villeneuve. I think that's probably the one director I would go with if they make this movie, if they make these movies down the road, which I don't think they really are. I think Paramount is keen on just keeping the Godfather trilogy as a whole, and like I said, they've been trying to make if they were going to make a new good series of Godfather movies, I really think they would have done it right when those books came out. So I sincerely doubt we're getting another Godfather movie in the distant future. But then again, I could be proven wrong by that. I have been proven wrong many times before, and hey, Paramount will do anything for a quick buck, as we all know. But anyway, so that's all I got to say about that one. So let's go ahead and move on to our last story in the world of movies and television. Michael Bay announced his new project. And apparently it's a movie that they're not even going to wait a full month for the damn event that actually happened to cause this. Because, yeah, they're doing a movie about the largest rescue mission in American history to save 2 downed pilots in Iran that happened during Operation Epic Fury. That's right. The war that our president basically started because he wanted to take people's minds away from the Epstein files, and the fact that they still haven't found Savannah Guthrie's mother, and the fact that they basically are basically admitting that they forced Stephen Colbert out because it's on their own merits. But no, let's make a movie about this thing that really should not have been a thing to begin with. Universal Pictures and director Michael Bay are teaming up to tell the heroic true story behind the recent rescue mission to save 2 downed pilots behind enemy lines in Iran. Sources tell Deadline that Bay is developing a feature film chronicling the extraordinary heroism of the 2 U.S. airmen rescued after their F-15E Strike Eagle was down during Operation Epic Fury. The film will be based on the upcoming book by Mitchell Zuckoff, which HarperCollins will publish in 2017. In early April, a month after Operation Fury began, the U.S. military launched a massive successful rescue operation in the Zagros mountain of Iran after the jets were shut down. The daring extraction successfully recovered the pilots as well as the weapons system officer from hostile forces behind enemy lines. The mission made global headlines and caught Bay's eye as he was deciding what the next thing he would direct is. Bay most recently directed Ambulance for Universal and has a production deal with the studio, making it the obvious choice for the package once he was on board. The film will reunite Bay with producer Scott Gardenauer and Oren Staff, who all collaborated on another true war story, 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Bay has spent nearly 3 decades collaborating with the U.S. military and law enforcement on films including The Rock, Bad Boys, and Armageddon. More notably on titles including Pearl Harbor, Transformers, and 13 Hours, military leadership provided immense logistical support, equipment, and personnel to ensure accurate portrayals of the U.S. Armed Forces. When reached for Deadline for comment, Bay said, "I've had an amazing partnership over my 30-year career working with the Department of War and amazing U.S. military members. In my film 13 Hours, no rescue force answered the call for help. The film is about everyone who answered the call in one of the most complex, intricate, and high-stakes operations in recent history. It celebrates the true heroism and unwavering dedication to our service members." Okay, but the big difference is between 13 Hours and this movie is the fact that 13 Hours happened about 5 years after the events in Benghazi. But this, you're not even waiting at least a month and a half before this whole thing took place. It's after this whole thing took place to essentially make this movie. That's the part that really kind of bugs me about this. And yeah, it just feels like you're moving way too fast to capitalize on a tragic event that you call the largest rescue mission in American history, which I sincerely doubt that. I think there's been much bigger rescue missions in American history besides this. I mean, yeah, it's good that we got them out of there, but at the same time, it's just like, I mean, I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable doing this not too long after the event happened. It's like what happened a couple years ago when COVID happened, and basically everyone said, "Well, we got to start making movies off of the pandemic." And of course, the Me Too movement, everyone started making movies off of that. But and it reminds me of what happened when we finally made those movies about September 11th. Everyone was always like, "Well, you can't make movies off of September 11th. It's way too soon to do that." It had been 5 years, and yeah. But they were still good movies. United 93 was still pretty good. So was World Trade Center. So was Reign Over Me. So, I mean, if you're going to do it well, I don't have a problem with it. It's just that what bugs me is that they're not even waiting for 2 months. Not even 2 months after this happened to make this movie. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me why they're doing this. But then again, maybe this could work out in Michael Bay's favor. I mean, I'd rather see him do these smaller movies like this than waste his time on pointless Transformers movies. I know they were trying to get him back for a new series of Transformers films, which I don't think is going to happen at this point, but you never know. They could try to squeeze him back in there, but yeah, if this movie caused him to do much smaller movies, because his smaller movies actually are really good. I did like Ambulance. I liked 13 Hours. I liked Pain and Gain. He has made a lot of good smaller films. I would like to see him do more of those type of movies instead of these big, overblown box office movies that 9 times out of 10 are not really all that good. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see how this pans out. I have my doubts about it, but I'd be willing to give it a fair shot if it's going to be a much smaller movie like a 13 Hours or a Pain and Gain or Ambulance. But, again, we will see what happens on that front as we go along here. But, so there you go. That's all the major movie news this week. So let's go ahead and talk about something that happened around here this weekend, kind of in connection to something that we just talked about on last week's show. So, of course, last week the big story was that Aaron Rodgers finally signed a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers to come back for one more season. $25 million he's getting paid. So, I mean, I think everyone kind of knew that this was probably more than likely going to be the end of the road for him. Anyway, as the Steelers are trying to figure out what to do now in their first year without Mike Tomlin there and Mike McCarthy's coming in. But then on Wednesday, news broke that Aaron Rodgers basically said that he's going to hang it up for good after this coming season. So this comes from ESPN. It says, Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers said Wednesday that the 2026 season will be the last of his Hall of Fame-worthy career. Yes, this is it, Rodgers said when asked if this would be his final NFL season. The four-time NFL MVP signed a one-year contract worth up to $25 million with the Steelers this week, reuniting with coach Mike McCarthy for its coach for 13 seasons with the Green Bay Packers. Rodgers added that he thought his career in Pittsburgh was over after former Steelers coach Mike Tomlin resigned following the team's wildcard playoff loss to the Houston Texans in January. When he said he was stepping away, that was an emotional moment just because we all love him so much and care about him. And I thought this was probably it for me in Pittsburgh, Rodgers said. But when the decision was made to hire Mike, I started opening my mind back up to coming back. Rodgers said he suggested general manager. It's the paragraph here has General and McCarthy right next to it. I'm acting like I'm about to talk to a general, like General McCarthy, but no. Rodgers said he suggested General Manager Omar Khan considered Mike McCarthy as a candidate for the Steelers head coach opening earlier in the offseason, but he wasn't sure how seriously his former head coach would be considered. I encouraged him from an outside perspective to interview Mike, Rodgers said, not thinking that he even would, honestly, just because of the way the league goes and the trend. It's kind of like whoever worked with Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, or one of these guys, Matt LaFleur, now gets a lot of looks and multiple guys in those trees have. But then, when it becomes more serious, I was thinking, wow, that would be a really interesting thought to come back and play with Mike. Rodgers added that his familiarity with a number of assistants brought to Pittsburgh by McCarthy added to his interest in returning to the Steelers. Rodgers, 42, called it a full-circle moment to be able to play for McCarthy again. Honestly, sitting in that first 8 o'clock meeting on Monday took me back to being a 22-year-old kid sitting in Green Bay listening to Mike's first meeting in 2006. Rodgers said, it's fun. I mean, it's like pinch-me moments. It's been happening the last few days. Getting to sit next to offensive line coach James Campen in the meetings is fun. Assistant offensive line coach Jari Evans was a teammate of mine. He is now on his staff now as a Hall of Famer. Should be a Hall of Famer. That's pretty cool, too. A lot of connections. McCarthy agreed with Rodgers, also calling it surreal to work together again. We both talked about the moment walking on the field together for the first time. McCarthy said it was special. McCarthy added that even at 42 years old, Rodgers said he still has his significant arm talent. He could throw it to anybody, but make sure we all saw that in first practice Monday, McCarthy said with a laugh. He still threw the ball extremely well. He's moving, but this is his first practice too, so he's knocking the cobwebs off. Rodgers signed a one-year deal, $13.65 million deal with the Steelers in June 2025, reaching the decision after several months of contemplation. Soon after, Rodgers told the Pat McAfee show that the 2025 season would likely be his last. However, after discussions with Con McCarthy and his wife, he decided to return for this final season, is 22nd in the NFL, making the call after the NFL draft. So, yeah, I really don't think this is much of a surprise overall that Aaron Rodgers is calling it quits after the season. What I think is kind of odd about this whole thing is the fact that they're basically setting this up, like, it feels like they're setting it up for some, like, they want this to become, like, another Last Dance moment. And you saw everybody immediately after this thing came out, it's calling it, it's Aaron Rodgers' Last Dance, and, okay. Here's something that people need to know about trendy things during a specific point in time. They were trends for a specific reason. The Last Dance was the thing that was literally called by the Chicago Bulls for that final year when Michael Jordan got the team to the NBA Finals and won the finals in that 1997-98 season. Just because that became the trendy thing during COVID doesn't mean we need to keep doing this every single time somebody retires. Like, it's the last dance for this person. It's the last dance for this team. It's the last dance for the, stop it already, Jesus. But the thing that kind of interests me about this is that they're announcing this just a couple of days after he re-signed with the Steelers. The 2026 season hasn't started yet, and we don't usually see people like this announce their retirement 1 year before they're gonna go and retire. Like, it really feels like they're trying to set this up to be like a big storyline for the season. Like, the Steelers have no choice but to get to the Super Bowl this year. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers' last chance to do so. It's just like, just because you try to set up a story doesn't mean it's gonna work out that way. I mean, like I said before, this really does not mean anything. It really does not. Like, I'm telling you, more than likely, the Super Bowl is going to be either Kansas City, Buffalo, Los Angeles. I think it's going to be one of those three teams, and maybe a sleeper team in there, fighting for the Super Bowl when the championship games come up here. I really don't think the teams that were in there last year, like Denver, New England, even Seattle, I think there is going to be a lot of regression from the teams that made the playoffs this year. And I don't think the Steelers are going to be one of those teams that are in there. I think everyone's overhyping this to the point where you're setting yourself up for failures at this point. And trust me, I've watched this team for a long time. I know what happens when they overhype something and then they set it up for failure, because it's been like this for the last 10 years under Mike Tomlin. I mean, it was like that pretty much since that infamous 2011 playoff game when Tim Tebow threw the touchdown to Demaryius Thomas on the first play of the game. That was where the downfall started to begin. Cheap plug for Tomlin, the Standard, which is on the Reviewing Network Live and also the Reviewing Network too. So, but yeah, I personally don't really think this changes my thoughts on the season overall. I don't think it's going to be a good season overall, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Rodgers doesn't finish the season. I think something's going to happen to him where, I mean, he's going to probably have the same thing that happened to him that Brett Favre happened to him when he had to retire. He didn't even finish the last season of his career. He basically got injured too much to the point where he couldn't finish at this point. I think when Brett Favre retired is right around the same time that Aaron Rodgers is at right now, if I'm not mistaken. How old is Brett Favre? 1969. So he would have been 41. Actually, Aaron Rodgers has surpassed him just barely. Rodgers is 42. Brett Favre was 41 when he had to leave. So, I mean, yeah, I really do not think that this is going to make much of a difference in terms of what the Steelers and the fans around here hopefully are thinking is going to happen here. I don't think anything's going to really change in general here. I think we're just going to see the same Steelers we've seen done before, except even worse, because you got old man Mike McCarthy as your head coach now with old man Aaron Rodgers. Like, I mean, this team is becoming a dinosaur, and that's not good for this football team. Even I don't care if everyone's going to keep praising it as like, it's a dream come true. The hometown kids coming home. Okay, so what? Is that really what we want to become now? Do we really want to become that team that cares more about hometown pride and, winning a playoff game instead of, I don't know, winning a Super Bowl like the other 6 championships? Or do we just not care about Super Bowls anymore? Because that's what it really feels like when everyone keeps looking at this and doesn't think that it's a bad thing that the Steelers are doing this. But I don't know, man. I'm just not confident in the season going forward for the Steelers. I just really don't feel like they're going to do anything, if much, this year at all. And this thing really doesn't help all that much. But, hey, confirmation that Aaron Rodgers does plan to retire this season. Or maybe they win the Super Bowl and Aaron Rodgers decides, I'm going to go ahead and do one more run after this, which I sincerely doubt that happens. So there you go. That's the story about Aaron Rodgers. So let's get to what is easily the biggest news story in the world of entertainment this week. And that is, of course, that after nearly a year of CBS pulling the biggest rug under Colbert's show, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert is officially no more as the show came to an end on Thursday and came out with a bang. This final episode was amazing. It was incredible. It was well done. We're going to delve into we're going to sum up. We're going to do a quick review of this because it is definitely something that deserves to be talked about. So yeah, I'll say this. I was not expecting it to go the way that it did, and it actually kind of ties into the final episode of the Colbert Report in a way when you really think about it, because the Colbert Report had a similar storyline for its last episode here, where Stephen acknowledges the joy the show has brought before a cold open montage of late night hosts past and present, including Ed Sullivan insulting Stephen, with Bryan Cranston, Paul Rudd, and Tim Meadows interrupting the monologue, Ting Notaro and Ryan Reynolds doing the same thing during Meanwhile, and Paul McCartney being the last guest for the show, talking to Stephen about performing on the Ed Sullivan Show, which this is the first time he's been, which is not the first time he's been there, but it kind of goes full circle for the Ed Sullivan Theater, which is sadly, I believe, going to be shut down for good after this episode aired. So, and discusses his newest album that's coming out called The Boys of Dungeon Lane, which is coming out next week, and then it goes into this pre-recorded sketch where Neil deGrasse Tyson, Jon Stewart, Andy Cohen, Elijah Wood, and the team from Strikeforce 5, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, and John Oliver, help Stephen deal with this wormhole that's about to envelop the show. And on the other side, Stephen joins Elvis Costello, Louis Cato, and former bandleader John Batista performing Costello's Jump Up. The 4 men in the Great Big Join Machine then join Paul McCartney in a live performance of Hello Goodbye, ending with Stephen's family and the show staff taking the stage. Stephen lets Paul McCartney in a pre-film final scene turn off the Ed Sullivan Theater's power, allowing the wormhole to turn the building into a snow globe that plays a music box rendition of the Late Show theme song. And that is the end of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert getting his dog Benny, who is sniffing the snow globe before being told to head off there. In a nice homage to Jack Parr, too. I mean, this finale was really, really good. It was really well done. And it just worked simply because Stephen Colbert, say what you will about the way he's going out, he didn't go out angry in this. Like, there was not one single mention of Trump in this at all. And I like the fact that they kept it relatively contained overall. They didn't let the thing that's causing them to leave in the first place get to Colbert overall. And he held it together very well. I thought this was a very, very solid finale. It was a masterclass of humor, heart, and a history to late night television in general, and this theater in general. I mean, it really was something very masterfully crafted, very well done, and it was such a fun experience to watch overall. It was a really good finale, and it's up there with some of the greatest finales we've ever seen. Like, this is right up there with the best finales of ever, like Johnny Carson's finale, the Cheers finale. Just so many great finales, and this one can definitely be put into that list easily, no question about it. And then, of course, when it was all said and done, the end of an era, and so as soon as the new 11:30 anchor show, the Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen began, everyone in America who loves Stephen Colbert all did this at the same time.
Huh? What's that noise? It sounded like everyone in the whole country changing channels at the same time.
That's exactly what happened.
Huh?
Okay, you can stop now. That's exactly what happened, because most of these people who love Stephen Colbert and watched that finale turned off CBS for the last time, and they are never coming back. And yeah, Jimmy Kimmel basically said the night before, don't, after tonight, you never need to watch CBS again. And I completely agree, because you know what? The price is right, and let's make a deal. I'll still be able to, is those newer episodes will eventually make their way onto Roku TV or Pluto TV at some point down the road, so I don't have to worry about that. George and Mandy's First Marriage, Ghost, Matlock, the shows I do watch on CBS Primetime, yeah, they'll be on DVD soon. I don't have to worry about that. What else was there? Because there was something else I watched on CBS a lot. Oh, CBS's NFL coverage. That's why we have NFL Red Zone, or at least I hope we'll have NFL Red Zone, because I have Comcast, and unfortunately, there has been a dispute with Comcast and essentially Disney, because you haven't been able to watch NFL Network ever since the beginning of the month. In fact, let me just check right now to see if it's still there. Nope. I really don't think they're going to do that. I really don't think they're going to change this. They're going to do something like this. It's been almost 4 weeks now. But, yeah. ESPN apparently bought NFL Network, but didn't even bother to renew the cable rights with Comcast, unfortunately. So, better get that fixed before the season begins, guys. Just saying. But, yeah, so, needless to say, I don't think I'll have any problems with watching these shows I do like from CBS somewhere else besides CBS, because, yeah, I'm not going back anytime soon. I mean, I might check in every once in a while for the news, for KDK, for the local news, because local news shouldn't be affected by this anything. It's not their fault that this is happening, but yeah. So yeah, Stephen Colbert is no more in late night television, and the first cog in the decline of late night television unfortunately has taken place. But it's okay though, because Stephen Colbert has begun his post life after The Late Show, because of course he's writing the new Lord of the Rings movie. But then the following day, this popped up online.
Hello, also welcome. It's time for another edition of Only in Monroe. I'm your guest, host, Stephen Colbert. Longtime viewers of Only in Monroe may remember that back in July of 2015, I filled in for the usual hosts, Michelle Bauman and Kaylani Ray Rafko Wilson. Still not sure how many people that is. Since I was last here in Monroe, Michigan, I spent 11 years as the primary host of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS, which came to an end last night. It's been an excruciating 23 hours without being on TV, so I am grateful to be able to be here on Monroe Community Media before they also get acquired by Paramount.
So yeah, Stephen Colbert, not but 23 hours, basically 24 hours after his last show began, was already in Monroe. What did he say? Monroe, in Michigan, I believe. Already doing this show on public access, which, as he said, was something that he did back when he was hosting The Late Show, when he was about to host The Late Show in 2015. So more on the story from Late Nighter, which published the story first. Stephen Colbert told viewers exactly where they'd find him after The Late Show. Turns out he wasn't kidding. At the top of his final CBS monologue Thursday night, Colbert paused to mark the occasion. Tonight is our final broadcast from the Ed Sullivan Theater. When the audience booed, Colbert waved them off. No, we were lucky enough to be here for the last 11 years, all right. Can't take this for granted. Though technically our first show in July of 2015 was from a public access station in Monroe, Michigan, for an audience of 12 people. Show business being what it is these days, that's probably where you'll see me next, and that was apparently not just a punchline. Exactly 24 hours after Thursday night's Late Show at 11:35 Friday, Colbert popped back up on Only in Monroe, the Monroe, Michigan public access show he famously commandeered in 2015 while preparing to launch The Late Show. This new appearance, like the first one, was unannounced, a fittingly low-key encore for a host whose CBS run began with one of the strangest pre-debut stunts in late-night history. As he did in 2015, Colbert opened the show with some local flavor, a sit-down monologue chock full of locally flavored jokes, a theme he returned to in a later segment titled Monroe News, which focused on a rivalry between two local hot dog shops, Monroe's Original and Vince's. Colbert's musical director for the night, none other than native Michigander Jack White, who joined Colbert for a Lady and the Tramp-style taste test of chili dogs from the two shops. He also welcomed back Michelle Bauman and Ray Rafko Wilson, the regular host of Only Monroe, with whom he drank shots of cane and grain and 80 proof liquor from a locally distilled River Raisin distillery, and discussed Bauman's thyroid cancer battle while taking turns inhaling helium. He closed out his interview with the two women by offering them the opportunity to guest host Comics Unleashed before FaceTiming the real Byron Allen, who readily agreed. So yeah, I've been critical, before we get to more of this, I am being critical of Byron Allen taking over the position. I think it's a step down from what the Late Show was, but I do like I have nothing against the guy himself. I just think that his business practices are very questionable, and I think he's basically doing this for time by agreement. And I like the fact that even Stephen Colbert's not looking at this with anger overall. I think it's pretty cool that he had him on this show to show that there was no real animosity between Colbert and Allen. Because really, it's neither one of their faults that this whole thing is happening. Steve Buscemi dropped in with a commercial for a local pizza joint that he confessed he knows nothing about, other than the fact that it shares his name. A different commercial featuring a government-mandated message, a lengthy and apparently uninformed description of the Monroe City flag for the visually impaired. Jeff Daniels, resident of nearby Chelsea, Michigan, and Colbert's first ever guest on a test episode of the Colbert Report, later made his viral Colbert questionnaire sandwich while also answering the host's questions, and later helped developing a one last edition of Community Calendar. Concluding the episode, Daniels, White, and Colbert destroyed the Only Monroe set, complete with a cameo from Eminem. So yeah, it's cool to see that Colbert's still working. It's cool to see that he's doing these kind of weird little small things to stay on television. And a comment on the video for this very well sums up what I think Colbert should probably be doing here. If Colbert spends the next year touring community TV broadcasts, I'd watch every single one. And I agree. I think that's something that he should do. And maybe that is what the whole plan of this in general here. So what's interesting about this whole thing is the fact that this video actually got flagged on several websites on YouTube because everyone thought that Paramount did this, because if you look at the copyright claims, it's from Paramount Global, and you're thinking to yourself, oh wow, pretty pathetic move, Paramount. But turns out that wasn't quite actually true, because when all this was going on all the other channels that had this show on there, the YouTube channel, the original YouTube channel that has this episode, was for Colbert, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and Monroe Community Media, and that was still on there even when this whole thing was going on. In fact, the Hollywood Reporter just put out a story as I was doing this show to talk about this. It says the social media verse exploded over the weekend when rumors that Paramount is trying to suppress the episode of a public access show that Stephen Colbert hosted, but the truth is something different, sources tell the Hollywood Reporter. Paramount is not actually trying to suppress copies of Colbert's surprise appearance on Only Monroe, as rumors across social media suggested over the weekend. A day after hosting the last ever Late Show on CBS, Colbert popped up as a surprise host Michigan public access TV show based in Monroe, Michigan, 11:30. It's talking about all the people that were involved in this. Stephen Colbert's return to Monroe in the Only Monroe episode was financed and produced by CBS Studios and was produced on Stephen Colbert's YouTube channel in collaboration with Monroe Control Media and The Late Show's YouTube channels, a CBS spokesperson said. As is our regular practice, we sent copyright notices to unauthorized websites that posted copyright content from CBS and other network studio talents such as Stephen Colbert. However, for this episode, have decided to waive further enforcement of this standard industry practice until additional review. So yeah, so technically it really wasn't Paramount doing this, although would you really be surprised if they did do this? And in fact, as I'm doing this right now, one of the producers for the show actually did say that the copyright claims are apparently being taken down on these. So it is good to see that they are listening to this whole thing in general. In fact, the person in particular who put the claims down in the first place, Michelle Kinney, actually did report that they took down the copyright claim on the video, so that you could still watch the video on their website, on the YouTube channel for Mayday Network, which is the company that I believe is the one that put the whole show together. So, I mean, I'm glad to see that's happening here, but yeah, would it really have shocked you at all if it was actually Paramount doing this because they were so bitter about Stephen Colbert getting more attention than they are? Would you really be surprised by that? I don't think you would have, but so yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to that levels just yet, but see if they do it again. See if they do it again when he does something like this again, because I think then you would probably have a legitimate reason to be like, okay, something ain't smelling right in Denmark here. So So there you go. That's my thoughts on the Stephen Colbert finale and this video that came out afterwards when him on Only Monroe. So let's go ahead and take a look at some recommendations for the week, and then we can get on out of here. And of course, with last week being the big wide release weekend for a number of different new titles, including the aforementioned The Bride, and also Speed Racer, Avatar: Fire and Ash, The Walk, Looney Tunes cartoons, a lot of good stuff. This week's kind of one of those catalog week titles, if you will. Not to say the titles that I mentioned in that the last segment there were a little bit were casual titles, but like these are more. Again, it's one of those weeks where the casual titles instead of the new releases are the big focal point of the big new releases this week. For example, you have the 4K debut for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, as well as The Great Outdoors and Harry and the Hendersons. Sentimental Value, one of this year's Oscar contenders, is getting a Criterion release this weekend. Parenthood's coming out on 4K for the first time. Another Criterion release, Lenny, with Dustin Hoffman. There is a couple of new releases that are smaller new releases, but you have Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, and the one I'm looking forward to checking out, If I Had Legs I'd Kick You, with Rose Byrne, which got her an Oscar nomination earlier this year. But again, it's mostly catalog titles. Student Bodies is getting a 4K release. The horror comedy parody from the 1980s, which was written by one of the writers from Woody Allen's movies from back in the day. But other than that, I don't see anything else truly noteworthy to talk about here. But yeah, so nothing. It's mostly just catch-up weekend. If you haven't gotten any of the new releases from the last couple of weeks, this is a weekend to probably do it with. So, or if you go out to Barnes & Noble and you find some of these older titles, now would be a good time to get them. So. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and if you like what you saw and want to see more videos like this, or listen to more videos like this, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button. And also check out some of our other videos we've done, check out our last episode, and with that said, I will see you guys next Sunday night. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Till then, we are out.